Welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with me, Sam Harris, your host. I invite fascinating humans from all walks of life to share their wisdom and unpack their mindsets and formulas for growth. Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with me, Sam Harris. Today, celebrating the 200th episode of the show. I'm not sure if it actually says this on the podcast backlog, but as far as my actual database of episodes that have been released, there's definitely 200. So this is the 200th episode, whether or not it looks like it is or not. So one, that's a cool achievement, 200 episodes. Two, it's a new year, and that's kind of cool because of new year, new you, all of this kind of thing that gets me excited. And I hope it does you as well. You listen to the Growth Mindset, so you're probably into growth and change. And it's always a nice time to think about things. And having just done 200 episodes, it's kind of cool to also reflect, apart from the fact that I kind of like being unconventional and doing things differently to whatever everyone else does. And I've just been quite annoyed this year by the amount of repetitive sounding things I'm hearing from different people around how to plan for your year of killing it and completely change yourself into someone that's going to do like 10 times more productivity and awesomeness than you've ever done before in your life. And I run a startup, so I read a lot of VCs messages and they're giving their predictions for the year, and they seem to also come with a prediction that they're going to be the best VC ever. And I'm just like, oh, shut up. And then all the startups are like, oh, 2021 was the worst year ever. Let's make 2022 amazing. And I'm also like, I don't know. I'm getting bored by everyone saying the same things. So I didn't really want to do my first self-recorded episode in a while and just be saying what everyone else is doing. So I thought I would change the angle on this a bit. And if you think about what all of these things are saying around this, let's plan a new year and stuff, is they get you to very much focus on yourself and be a bit self-obsessive for a few days. And it's like, okay, how am I going to change this year? What am I going to do to make it the best year ever? And it's all very I-based. And I'm like, well, the world is changing at a really big pace, and I just kind of like to kind of go in the opposite direction of when everyone is going in one way. And if you think about it, you're being told to think about this year and like, what about the entire existence of the universe for like billions of years and such. And we're just not thinking about that for a while, and we're getting very narrow-minded into just ourselves for just this year. And I like to be not narrow-minded. And so I thought we could think about change a bit more holistically. So some of the things I have noticed, and I guess just happen all the time, is that everything kind of changes anyway. And places change. For example, I used to go on holiday as a kid to Malta, which is lovely. It's like this little island. And they used to have these really cute, super old buses that looked like they come out of a movie, and they were so slow it was ridiculous and barely worked. And yeah, the locals were just super chilled out. They didn't seem to do that much, and it was just a really, really nice place to be. And I went back again like a year or two ago, and it's just completely built up. There's hotels everywhere, and there's none of the old buses anymore, which makes me a bit sad because they were super cute, and they're all like these modern buses, and they actually work. They've got air conditioning, and all the locals have got their own cars. Like literally every single one of the people that lives on the island now has a car. So there's bloody cars everywhere. And it's completely changed as a place. But like, there's not much I can do about the fact that it's changed, apart from being open to the fact that it changes and still have a nice holiday and be an adventure of just like experiencing new things rather than being stuck in I want it to be like what it was. So firstly, places change. Secondly, people change. There used to be a guy at college who I was not really friends with because I just didn't like him. Constantly was making up lots of stories that was mostly lies, and I don't know, he's a bit touchy if you ever sort of called him up on anything. And I don't know, he started getting into drugs and stuff, and I just didn't really like being around him. And then left college, went to uni, never saw him again. And some of my friends were kind of friends with him from before, and they were still friends with him since. And like I met him at like a wedding. And actually, he was lovely. It turns out he used to have like mega anxiety about life and things, and his drug thing took him into a bit of a spiral. He ended up getting a therapist and dealing with his life in the years that I haven't known him, and he's become a really, really nice person who, it's great to sort of be friends with him suddenly. And it's kind of weird how epic some
someone can change compared to what I expected from them. And just in general, lots of my friends have changed, like the ones that used to eat lots of meat are vegetarians, the ones that were all like macho, trying to score chicks, some of those are gay. And one of my friends was like probably the idiot of the group. He has since become a doctor and has like a wife and kids and is like killing it at life. And I feel like I'm the idiot, to be fair. But anyway, everyone that you know changes and lots of places change, and then just obviously technology and all this kind of stuff. Like 10 years ago, I went for a road trip around America with a compass and didn't have a smartphone, didn't have a GPS, sat nav thing at all, just drove in different directions for a bit and went across all of America. And it was fine. And now that seems like nuts. But anyway, the point is, everything just changes a lot in a really big way. And obviously, I'm guessing as you listen to this, you probably have a growth mindset for yourself and how you can change and expecting others to change around you. And so we shouldn't really get stuck in our ideas of what's going on. And I think when you try to plan your life for the year and do all your goal setting and stuff, it's very easy to forget about everything else and how much that's all changing. And I think personally, just week to week, day to day, I'm always trying to improve and do stuff, and that's great. And it's very easy to forget that everyone else is trying to improve and everything else is changing. And it can kind of surprise you a bit. And I think it's nice to stop at this point of year and actually think about how everything else is changing and how you're going to change with it, as opposed to against it, and kind of just being completely focused on yourself and how you can actually like go with the flow as such. Because I think when you try to set a very strict life path and say, I'm doing exactly this, without thinking about how the future is going to be different and change, you can just be sort of bashed around by the waves of life and fail at stuff. Whereas when you can be a bit more open to it, you can kind of go with the flow and ride those waves, and that's a much more enjoyable experience. So yes, you should probably still do some planning for this year. And personally, I like to set some scary goals in like the health, fitness, work areas of my life. But you should also be very open to the fact that you might not know what the best things are going to be, and at some point in time an opportunity might arise that you hadn't thought of, and you should absolutely just go for it and abandon all of your plans and do something completely different that maybe scares you. And you shouldn't be super strict about like what you're doing. And if you spent like a whole week just analyzing what you're going to do with this year, it's probably like too much, because lots of stuff's going to happen that you haven't thought about. So basically, I just wanted to like prod your imagination to go in a different way and not get too self-obsessed with everything about me, because it's a bit too much. Another thing I've thought about that's kind of odd, but I think is kind of cool, is that if you imagine that your life isn't yours, and that perhaps you're just like a method actor who's just had to come and live your life for the past year or two, who's just kind of been doing it, but like you're going to go somewhere else and go back to your other life that isn't the one that's in the body that you're doing. But then you're told that actually you can't swap back to the life that you're going back to, and that you're sort of stuck in this body that you've just been like filling in for a bit. Like, what would you do if like this wasn't you, but you then had to live with your situation? And it's like, okay, I'm actually a different person. I have to do all these things for this person anyway, and now I'm just going to be stuck here. I think you let go of a lot of the stuff that you're holding on to more quickly, because I think there's a good framework for doing this already, but it's just less good. Like your best friends, if they were giving you advice, it's kind of better than the stuff you think of yourself. So imagine that you're your best friend and what you tell yourself, but imagine that like you are you, but like you're not you at the same time, which it sounds a bit like I'm on acid, really. I don't know how this has come across. I just thought I'd sort of roll with it because I'm kind of thinking about it and I kind of like it. But imagining that I'm actually sort of don't have any like ownership of all the things that I've done in the past sort of 10 years, and I don't get tied to the books that I sort of have bought and have told myself I'm going to read but never got round to, and documents that are in my stuff on my computer that I'm never really going to use and can just throw away, and just like lots of stuff that I just feel like I need to have but don't. Like, actually, fuck it. if I wasn't me, I'd just throw it away straight away, and probably should. And then in terms of like what am I doing with my life besides the things that are in it, it's like you can just be a bit more open to being bold and just going for some wide changes and thinking about, okay, what is the thing I really want to be doing, and not really be tied to like, well, I've done this other thing before, because it doesn't matter. So yeah. Don't know if this makes no sense at all, but yeah, try imagining that you're a method actor that's in your life and now stuck with it. And if you enjoy it, roll with it. If you think I'm a freaking weirdo, don't worry. You can completely forget about this podcast as soon as you finish listening to it. Up to you. Either way, I think the main things that seem to give the most improvement in my life are usually just doing something that kind of scares me a bit. So if you were thinking of planning what you're doing this year, try and quickly write out a few things that you know you should probably do, because you probably already know what they are, and pick the ones that scare you and try and do those. I think that's usually the best way of doing life. So on that note, the thing that I've been doing is recording this podcast, as you are hearing, and I want to do more of them and get better at them, and also not to be scared by doing them, because I've been meaning to do this for like a month and haven't done it. And I just pressed record 10 minutes ago and I'm still going, and it wasn't very hard, to be honest. I wrote down 4 bullet points of stuff I wanted to speak about, and now I've spoken about all of them. And yeah, I think a lot of the things that scare you are actually nowhere near as hard as you think they are. It's just a bit like jumping into a cold swimming pool. You can sort of take forever, like slowly getting into it and then kind of failing, or you can just jump in. And a lot of the scary things, you just need to start, and then once you're doing them, it's fine. So I really like that analogy, and it did make me stop faffing around this morning and just start recording this podcast, and hopefully it means I'll record more, and hopefully I'll also be doing lots of other cool adventurous stuff this year. And I want to keep this podcast short, so I'm not going to ramble on forever about those things. And I just hope that you find some scary things to do yourself this year, and also think about the fact that everything changes, and don't get too self-obsessed, because you can kind of go with the flow and you're going to change lots anyway. So I hope that makes you feel good. Keep up the growth mindset, and I'll be back again more over this month. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Growth Mindset Podcast. Before you head on to another episode, what's your biggest aha moment from today's discussion? You can share with us your insights and join us on ReasonFM. ReasonFM is a social podcasting app and the best way to discover new podcasts, connect with hosts and other listeners. Also, don't forget to tune into the Wiser Than Yesterday podcast with me and my co-host Nico, and we expose you to a different perspective and dive into the world's most thought-provoking and inspiring books. That's all for this episode, and with that, keep learning and keep growing.